Joan, we're at a critical point here. We're looking at managing others. We've managed self. We understand a little bit more about the concepts. And folks, as you read about, everything is woven right the way through. Don't think, hey, that one, we put it to a side and now you move on to something. Everything is connected. And last week we talked about building trust when we talk about building, managing others. Today we're talking about building relationships. This is a big one, baby. So where do we start today, Joan? Help us to understand why this is important.
Oh, it's huge. It's all about relationship. And so in this, trust had to get its own chapter. And so we dealt with that last week. So now in this chapter here, we present 5 other relationship building blocks. They go along with trust. Mm-hmm. And with these 5 elements, you can position yourself not just to create, but to sustain mutually beneficial relationships, and not just at work. This is for life.
True, just true. The chapter begins by saying the most important single ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people. Yeah. And that is from Theodore Roosevelt, as a matter of fact. Gone a long time, but still a very important point to remember and to ponder today. And so in the book, you've illustrated for us some building blocks. And I want to look at those building blocks, if you don't mind, Joan. And it starts with, one of them is effective communication.
Indeed. And there's a quote in the chapter from George Bernard Shaw that I absolutely love. And he says that one of the biggest mistakes about communication is the misperception that it has taken place.
Yes.
Because a lot of times we think we're communicating, but we're not. Why is that? Because communication is about creating shared meaning. Shared meaning. Because I can say something to you, I can send you an email, and the message that I intended to convey is quite different from what you take away from it. Mm-hmm. So in that context, communication has not taken place. So in order to ensure that we have true communication, we need a feedback loop where you check to ensure that the message sent is the same as the message that was received.
And how does that tie into building relationships?
Because in terms of to have relationship, you must be able to communicate with each other. So if you and I are in a relationship, I need to share with you what I'm thinking. I need to hear back from you in a way that shows that you understand where I'm coming from. So, for example, even explaining what I need from you in our relationship, whether it's a work relationship or a personal relationship. If you're misunderstanding the meaning of what I'm saying, then you might be working really hard at giving me what you think it is that I need. But because I didn't check to ensure that you understood what I was conveying to you, we're working at cross purposes.
Yeah. We thought, because I've told you, you should get it. And it's not necessarily that.
Exactly.
Because there's some blockers to the communication that we need to be mindful of, because the receiver also has their own situations that they're managing. And you went on to list here, people perceive the best listeners to be those who periodically ask questions that promote discovery and insight. And because we're looking at the effective communication model, Joan. And so people perceive the best listener to be those who periodically ask questions that promote discovery and insight. So in communicating, it's good to ask a question if you're basically seeking clarity.
Exactly. And to seek clarity, and also even just to confirm that the person, actually got the message that you intended. And I don't think my husband is watching this morning, so I'm going to tell a story about it.
Johnny, have a production crew cracking up. So you're safe with me this morning. That's good.
Because, I would say to him, can I talk to you? He was like, of course you can talk to me. I was like, okay, well, look at me. And he was like, I don't have to look at you for you to talk to me. But it's because I want to see the light of understanding.
Yes,
come on.
Yes. You're so right. I myself am guilty often. Sometimes you're busy at work. You're sitting at your desk, you're going. Someone would come into the office. I'm saying, don't mind what I'm doing. Just I can hear you. I do that sometimes, but that's not what's required. Stop what you're doing and pay attention. Focus. Look at
I
the
mean, you
person.
don't need to do that for every conversation,
Yeah.
but there's some which, are more intense that, okay, you really
Yes.
do need to focus and to have that active listening, not just while you're doing something else.
And part of, and so body language is going to be important. You said good listening was seen as a cooperative conversation where feedback flowed smoothly in both directions without either party becoming defensive, even when their assumptions or positions were challenged. That for a lot of people is extremely difficult to do.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And the thing is, as you mentioned before, we're all different, huh? So we have different filters. So I listen to you based on my life experiences, based on how I was brought up, my values, etc. So even the use of certain words can communicate different things from different people. So it's important to have that feedback loop to check to ensure, okay, yes, what I'm taking away from this conversation is what you intended me to understand.
Right. So one of the building blocks in building a relationship, folks, is to have effective communication. There are many elements. You'll read it in the book, folks. And also to have a positive mindset. Why is that important?
I'm sure that everyone who's listening, if they think about it for just a moment, they can recall someone whose mindset was so close it was like a steel trap. They had these preset opinions, perspective, and no matter what you said, they were not going to budge from there. And sometimes people are not even aware in terms of where that perspective originated, but they're still holding on to it, and will not consider there are other possibilities. You may have had a bad experience with a particular person, sometimes years ago. You can't even remember what the original disagreement was about, but you still know you don't like them. Okay? Or maybe you tried doing something as a child and you weren't good at it. And I'll put my hand up, and that's me and riding a bicycle. And you will not get me on a bicycle again because of that
Closed
encounter I had with the concrete road. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to meet my knees, but it did. And so I have a closed mindset when it comes to riding a bicycle, unless it's a stationary bicycle in the gym. Right?
So it's important to pay
Yeah.
attention to the mindset when it comes to building that relationship. Whether you have an open or closed mindset, whether you have a learning or safeguarding mindset, whether it is probing or steadfast or promotion or prevention. And you've broken each of those down in the book so we can see it for ourselves and begin to see who we are, because it's reflective of each of us or some of us.
Yeah.
And so get to know yourself better, and then you can see how that mindset is critical to building that relationship going forward. You go on to talk about another one of those building blocks to be respect. That is something that seems to be scarce among a lot of people today.
Indeed. And it's one of the most common complaints that we hear, that people don't feel respected. Staff don't think that management respects them. And if you don't have, and again, that's why I've dubbed it a building block. You need a foundation that is grounded in respect. Now, respect doesn't mean that you have to agree with the other person's perspective on things, but it means that you make an effort to understand and to accept and appreciate it, and more important, the person. Because you can disagree with a person and their perspectives and their opinions, but that doesn't take away from the person's humanity, from, the obligation that you have to extend courtesy and respect to them.
And sometimes that difference is age related, and oftentimes younger people will rebel because they think, oh, you're older. Who you think you're talking to? I know better. I know differently. And you must find that common ground that says, you know what, there's a value in our difference of age and your approach versus mine. So let me learn how to benefit from that as well. So respect is earned and it's not something that's assumed.
Exactly. And something that I say in the book that I think it's really important for us to not just understand, but to accept. And it's the law of the harvest. What's the law of the harvest? If you want to eat Ackies, you can't go and plant Bajan cherries and then look up in the Bajan cherry tree for the Ackies to start come out, right? So you want to be respected. The thing to do is to extend respect to others first off.
Absolutely. Another of those building blocks is to have empathy. Empathy. Now, listen, and I can hear a lot of people saying, no, 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 no. There's no room for emotions in this exercise, but you must have empathy. It helps with the development of that relationship with that other person.
Exactly. And listen, I've tried it with and without the empathy, and let me tell you, with the empathy, you get a lot further. Right? People want to be understood. People want to be appreciated. And we've spoken about diversity. We've spoken about the importance of acknowledging that people have different lived experiences. That doesn't make them better, worse, right, or wrong. It makes them different. And if we're going to have mutually beneficial relationships, we have to be willing to seek to understand other people rather than assuming that everyone sees the world exactly how we do. Yeah. So with empathy, we seek first to understand and then to be understood.
Indeed. I mean, we reach that mark of empathy. But above all, there's the platinum rule. Now, what is the platinum rule?
No, the thing is, people are not very familiar with the platinum rule at all. As a matter of fact, oftentimes when I use this in my training, people think I'm making it up. So I have to tell them, no, Google it. I'm not making this up. People are more familiar with the golden rule because it's a biblical principle, which says, do unto others as you would have done unto you. But, and believe you me, I don't want my priest to think that I'm questioning the Gospels. But as far as a management principle, I advocate the platinum rule. Why? Because again, diversity, we're not all the same. So if you say that you're going to manage people the way you would like to be managed, that presumes that people are exactly like you, but they're not necessarily. Even siblings growing up in the same household are different. So why would you assume that someone who grew up completely differently than you did would want exactly what you want? So the platinum rule says instead, do unto others as they would have done unto them.
Oh, that's so important. Marcia Rock on social media says, respect goes both ways. And you have to give respect to get respect. You're absolutely right. So that's what we were talking about. Thank you, Marcia. You're picking it up, Marcia. You're picking it up. And that's important. We're getting through. The communication is being effective today. And so, folks, those are some of the building blocks to building a good relationship. And, while we're talking about a manager's toolkit, we're talking about you as an individual and your individual relationship with another or others, your children, be it your mate, whomever. And it is so important that you understand all of these developments to having a very successful, mutually beneficial, meaningful relationship between yourself and others. So there are several building blocks. Get to know what they are, get to understand those building blocks so that you practice. And then you will see all the benefits we've been talking about. And for those of you in management, people are not units of production. They are people. And so in communicating with them and building a relationship, it is also important for us to understand better effective communication and all of the things we've spoken about this morning.